Okay, hi, welcome to my psychology presentation. Today I've chosen to do topic 2 to discuss, which suggests that according to Erik Erikson's stages of psychosocial development, the occurrence of an identity crisis occurs during the teenage years in which people struggle to find a sense of self and personal identity, which I believe to be true. Erikson assumed that this crisis is usually resolved by the age of 18. An identity crisis can be defined as a developmental event that involves a person questioning their sense of self or place in the world. This conflict occurs prominently in adolescence. The three objectives that I have chosen to discuss in support of Erikson's contentions are: 1. Adolescents typically have greater activity of the frontal region of their brain, where developing identity can be attributed to. 2. Typically being a more emotional person can affect perception of identity. And 3, based on the 3 stages of identity development, the sense of identity is strengthened between adolescence and adulthood. Decision-making occurs in the prefrontal cortex of the brain, where reward sensitivity and cognitive control is located, as well as being the region for the contributions of developing self-related and identity-related processes. While adolescents are physically, cognitively, and socioculturally more developed than children, they also show evidence of behaving differently than the average adult. Both Pfeiffer and Berkman studied adolescent brains using neuroimaging to examine decision-making and identity. This gave them insight on adolescent views rather than what adults believe adolescents should value or how they should behave. The self-reference region is the part of the brain where information that is evaluated by a person in relation to their identity is remembered more accurately than other information. Activity of self-evaluations maintain stable in young years and tend to increase during adolescence. Direct evaluations of a person's own identity is typically thought of a lot in the human brain, as well as indirect social self-evaluations. The self-evaluation region of the adolescent brains are much more active compared to adults, which are instead typically used for mentalizing, social perspective taking, and evaluating others. In 2003, scientists Silk, Steinberg, and Morris conducted an experiment of 12-year-olds and 15-year-old adolescents. The study was used to examine the degree of emotion and found that those with more intense and unstable emotions typically reported having more miserable symptoms and generally responded to more negative emotions. In summary, the study suggests that those who are typically more emotional and unstable tend to experience greater episodes of identity crisis in the form of questioning their sense of self. As an adolescent moves into adulthood, their sense of identity is gradually strengthened. They do this by transitioning from the diffusion stage, where the individual has not yet committed to an identity and is not currently attempting to form one, to the foreclosure stage, when the individual commits to an identity without exploring other options. Then they move to the moratorium stage, where the individual is actively exploring alternative options of identity, and from the moratorium stage to the identity achievement status, those who have committed to an identity after exploring. A study examined a sample of people aged 29 to 33 in order to discover their stability and change in identity during daily occurrences. Longitudinal qualitative analyses revealed the 3 main processes of identity development, including approach to change, the willingness to adjust and evolve already established commitments; story integration, using the basis of what is already learned and applying that to other things they encounter; and finally, participation in a broader life context, when identity expands beyond personal aspirations. A pro of my first choice of evidence is that the typical adolescent age is approximately classified from age 13 to 19, and therefore the range that was chosen was perfect. However, a con is that there may be other factors that influence the activity of the frontal region of the brain. A pro of my second choice of evidence is that in comparison to measuring thoughts that are inside the head, It's much easier to determine the negative emotions of the adolescents when they're physically displaying them. However, the age range is not replicable of that of a typical adolescent. A pro of my final source of evidence is that the experiment is applied to a group of young adults by examining their ability to not experience an identity crisis at their age, which have the potential to be much more reliable because their brains are more developed than an adolescent brain. However, the qualitative results are more difficult to measure in comparison to quantitative results. In conclusion, I support Erik Erikson's contention that identity crisis is typically resolved by the age of 18 during the stage between adolescence and adulthood. And these are the online references I used, including my images. Thank you.